Somewhere in America right now, a 5-cent coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a coffee can, or a forgotten bankroll, and the person who owns it has absolutely no idea it could be worth more than a luxury home, more than a lifetime of 9-to-5 paychecks, more than $700,000. It doesn't sparkle like gold, it doesn't shout for attention, it looks ordinary, and that's exactly why it's so dangerous to ignore. Today's story is about the 1981 Thomas Jefferson nickel, a coin so misunderstood that most people have already spent it, lost it, or tossed it back into circulation without a second thought. But under the right conditions, this nickel can quietly transform into a six-figure asset, and in extremely rare cases, it has crossed into territory most collectors once thought impossible. Imagine holding a nickel in your hand and realizing that the smallest decision you ever made, whether to keep it or spend it, might decide the difference between financial stress and financial freedom. That's not exaggeration, that's history repeating itself. The year was 1981, a time when America was changing fast, inflation was squeezing households, interest rates were painful, and people were saving whatever spare change they could. The U.S. Mint, under pressure to cut costs, altered production methods in subtle ways that few noticed at the time. The Denver Mint struck millions of Jefferson nickels that year, each bearing the small but powerful D Mint mark. On the surface, they looked identical to the nickels before and after them, but behind the scenes, something unusual was happening. Metal preparation varied, die pressure fluctuated, quality control slipped just enough to allow anomalies through, and those tiny differences invisible to the untrained eye would later become the foundation of massive value. This is where the story shifts from ordinary pocket change to hidden wealth. Most 1981 Jefferson nickels are worth exactly 5 cents today. That's the cruel joke of rare coins. 99.9% of them will never change your life, but the remaining fraction, that fraction is where legends are born. The difference between a spender and a seller is knowledge, patience, and sometimes sheer luck. Collectors began noticing something strange decades later. Certain 1981 nickels displayed extraordinary strike quality, razor-sharp steps on Monticello, flawless fields, and surfaces untouched by circulation. These were coins that somehow escaped bags, hands, vending machines, and time itself. When professionally graded, a few emerged with elite certifications, grades so high they exist in single digits worldwide. Now here's the part that makes people sit up straighter. In the high-stakes world of rare coins, condition isn't just important, it's everything. A Jefferson nickel graded MS-67 is impressive. MS-68 is extraordinary, but the whisper-level rumor, the kind that spreads quietly through auction houses and private collector circles, is the existence of ultra-high-grade 1981 nickels with nearly perfect steps and surfaces that look like they were struck yesterday. These are the coins that can command prices approaching $700,000 when the right buyer appears. And yes, that sounds unbelievable. A nickel, worth more than most retirement accounts. But history doesn't care whether something sounds believable, it only cares whether it's true. Ask yourself this: how many coins have you personally handled without ever really looking at them? How many rolls have passed through your fingers while you were distracted, tired, or rushing? That's how fortunes slip away, not dramatically, quietly. Here's where fear creeps in. And it should, because every year, fewer untouched examples remain. Coins get damaged, coins get cleaned, coins get lost forever. The window of opportunity narrows, not because demand is dropping, but because supply is vanishing. Serious collectors aren't getting younger, they're getting more selective. And when a top-tier example appears, they don't hesitate, but excitement follows close behind that fear. Because the barrier to entry is still shockingly low. You don't need to buy $1 million artifact to play this game. You need awareness. You need to slow down. You need to know what to look for. Somewhere, right now, someone is unknowingly sitting on a life-altering coin and assuming it's worthless. Let's pause for a second. Quick question. If a stranger handed you a nickel and said, "This could be worth more than your house," would you laugh a broken bar or would you look closer? Most people laugh. The wealthy look closer. The Jefferson nickel itself was never meant to be glamorous. It was designed to be practical, durable, and forgettable. And that's precisely why the rare ones hide so well. No one brags about nickels. No one shows them off. They sleep quietly while collectors hunt louder coins like gold and silver. Meanwhile, the 1981D sits in the shadows, waiting for the right highs. What separates the ordinary from the extraordinary is often microscopic. Sharpness in Jefferson's hair, crisp lettering, full, uninterrupted steps on Monticello's staircase, original luster that hasn't been dulled by human hands. These details are invisible to most people, but they scream value to professionals. And here's the cliffhanger that keeps seasoned collectors awake at night. Not all valuable 1981D nickels are already discovered. In fact, experts quietly admit that some of the finest examples may still be raw, ungraded, and hidden in everyday places. Banks, estates, old collections passed down without explanation, boxes labeled miscellaneous coins that no one ever bothered to open. Think about inheritance for a moment. How many families have thrown away drawers of coins because they assumed it was just clutter? How many storage units have been cleared without a second glance? Every one of those moments could erase a six-figure opportunity forever. Now let's talk urgency, because this isn't a story you can put off until next year. The market for elite-grade modern coins has matured. Wealthy buyers are competing globally now, not just locally. When a top population coin appears, bidding wars can escalate fast. Prices don't rise gradually, they jump, and once a benchmark sale happens, the entire category resets higher. This is how a nickel becomes a headline. Humor me for a second. Imagine telling your younger self that one day you'd regret spending a nickel, not $1, not $100, a nickel. It sounds ridiculous until it isn't. And here's the final twist, the part most people miss. Even if you don't own a $700,000 example, the act of learning to see coins differently changes everything. It turns spare change into possibility. It turns ignorance into leverage. It turns a passive habit into an active strategy. Because the real story of the 1981D Jefferson nickel isn't just about one coin. It's about the hidden value all around us that we've been trained to ignore. It's about slowing down in a fast world. It's about asking better questions. It's about refusing to assume that something small can't change your life. So the next time a nickel passes through your hands, don't rush, don't dismiss it, don't laugh it off. Look at it, really look at it. Because history has already proven that the smallest objects can carry the biggest consequences. And somewhere out there, a 1981D Jefferson nickel is waiting for the moment it stops being spent a broken bar and starts being recognized. Imagine holding a coin in your hand that could instantly transform your life. Not just any coin, but one minted in 1986. Bearing the proud face of Thomas Jefferson, stamped with the elusive D-Mint mark that has collectors and millionaires scrambling. You might be looking at your change right now, thinking, could I actually have this hidden treasure sitting in my pocket? What if I told you that this seemingly ordinary nickel, made of copper and nickel, could be worth an astounding $692,000 today? Yes. Nearly $700,000 for a coin that most people toss aside without a second glance. And the craziest part, you could have one without even realizing it. But before you rush to your drawer, you need to understand the story behind this coin, because the difference between fortune and frustration often comes down to knowledge. Back in 1986, the United States Mint struck billions of nickels for everyday circulation. The Jefferson nickel, already a familiar piece of currency, passed through countless hands: cashiers, children, bus drivers, and coin collectors. Yet in the shadow of these ordinary coins, a single batch of 1,986 nickels carried an anomaly so rare that experts today whisper about them in awe. Not a scratch, not a flaw, but a combination of factors that created a coin destined for history. Some collectors call it the phantom nickel, because its true value remained hidden for decades. Here's the twist most people don't realize. The 1,986 Jefferson nickel isn't rare because of how many were minted. No, billions were produced. Its value comes from a perfect storm of minting errors, die anomalies, and the unforgiving scrutiny of collectors who know that even the slightest imperfection or perfection can spell millions. Imagine standing in a sea of ordinary coins and discovering the one that carries the secret to unimaginable wealth. It's like finding a pearl in a pile of oysters, so only this pearl could pay off a mortgage, fund a dream, or finance a life of luxury. But let's slow down for a moment. What exactly makes this coin so extraordinary? It all comes down to a subtle mark, the D of the Denver Mint. Now, most nickels carry this mark without much fanfare, but in certain 1,986 coins, the placement, shape, and strike depth create a variant that defies ordinary valuation. It's a detail so minute that casual collectors often overlook it, yet for experts, spotting the difference is akin to identifying a Van Gogh in a sea of prints. Miss it, and you've passed up life-changing wealth. Spot it, and suddenly, you're in a league most people only dream about. Now, here's a question that might make you laugh and panic just a little. Have you ever looked at a coin and thought, could this be worth more than my car? Sounds ridiculous, right? But millions of Americans have done exactly that, and stories abound of people finding rare nickels tucked between couch cushions, in old jars, even forgotten in drawers for decades. Some laughed at first, thinking it was impossible, and then the appraisers arrived with their magnifying glasses, certificates of authenticity, and a single number that changed everything: $692,000. What's fascinating about the 1,986 Jefferson nickel is that it doesn't scream valuable. Unlike gold coins or exotic collector's items, it looks like your everyday change. Yet therein lies the thrill and the danger, because the ordinary can conceal the extraordinary, and the moment you realize this, a kind of urgency sets in. Suddenly, every coin in circulation, every dusty roll in your attic, and even that forgotten coin jar becomes a potential gateway to wealth. It's the excitement of the hunt, the adrenaline of knowing that at any moment, fortune could appear in the palm of your hand. But let's take a step back and consider the broader context. Coin collecting is not just about luck, it's about timing, education, and meticulous observation. The 1,986 nickel teaches a lesson that extends far beyond coins. Opportunity often hides in plain sight. Most people go through life missing these opportunities simply because they don't know what to look for. They see a nickel and see a nickel. You, however, have the chance to see a treasure map in metal. That's the difference between the dreamers and the ones who actually cash in. Here's a twist that will make you double-check your drawers. These coins are so rare that even seasoned collectors sometimes argue about authenticity. A single misidentified coin could cost thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Authentication matters, grading matters, and the stakes are real. Imagine finding a coin that might be worth nearly $700,000, only to have an inexperienced eye dismiss it as ordinary. That's the peril and the allure of the 1986 Jefferson nickel. It's a game of precision, patience, and sometimes, sheer luck. Now, I can almost hear you asking, where do these coins even come from? Well, many have been tucked away in circulation, others in collections that no one thought to appraise properly. Some have emerged from old coin rolls bought decades ago for face value, and occasionally, one surfaces in a stack of forgotten change at a garage sale or estate sale. It's these stories that give the coin its mystique. Imagine walking past a coin jar and not recognizing the single nickel that could change your life forever. It's a sobering reminder that fortune favors the prepared. And here's a moment to pause because this is where most people fail. They assume that spotting rare coins is complicated or requires insider connections. In reality, it often begins with curiosity and a willingness to examine what others overlook. With the 1986 Jefferson nickel, the difference between a 5-cent coin and a $692,000 fortune can hinge on a millimeter of mint mark placement or a subtle die error that only a trained eye can detect. Suddenly, the mundane becomes magical, and the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary. Let's inject a little humor here to keep things lively. Imagine showing this nickel to a friend and saying, "Hey, want to see a coin worth more than your house?" Their face would be priceless. But beyond the laugh, there's a lesson. Opportunities often appear in forms we underestimate. And when you recognize them, the results can be life-changing. As we move deeper into this story, it's impossible not to feel the tension. The 1986 Jefferson nickel is more than a coin, it's a symbol of hidden potential. It embodies the thrill of discovery, the rush of knowing that a fortune can be sitting in your hand without warning. Every collector, every investor, every casual finder feels that pulse of excitement. And just when you think you understand its value, a new twist appears. Market dynamics, collector demand, and expert certification can suddenly amplify its worth. That $692,000 figure is not just a number, it's a living, breathing reflection of desire, rarity, and timing. And now, imagine the moment when you realize you might already own one. Your heart races, your mind spins, and suddenly, the past decades of overlooked coins, spare change, and dusty drawers become a treasure map. It's thrilling, overwhelming, and entirely real. The 1986 Jefferson nickel doesn't just reward luck, it rewards awareness, diligence, and the courage to explore possibilities others ignore. But let's keep the suspense alive. Not every 1986 nickel is a millionaire maker. Some are ordinary, circulating coins that will never reach these heights. The key lies in identifying the perfect strike, the subtle anomalies, and the authenticity verified by experts. And that's where the story gets personal. You are the protagonist in this unfolding drama of discovery. Each coin you inspect, each roll you open, and each expert opinion you seek is part of your journey toward uncovering hidden wealth. So, what happens next? How do you transform a common coin into a life-altering treasure? It begins with research, observation, and action. Seek knowledge from credible sources. Examine coins carefully for mint marks, die errors, and condition. Connect with trusted appraisers and collectors who understand the nuances of value. And most importantly, never underestimate the coin in your pocket because it might just be the one that changes everything. As we approach the conclusion, pause and reflect. The 1986 Jefferson nickel teaches a powerful lesson. Extraordinary opportunities often disguise themselves as ordinary objects. A simple coin, overlooked for decades, can become a vessel of immense wealth. But the journey is not passive, it demands attention, education, and courage. Those who recognize this can claim fortunes that seem almost mythical, while those who ignore it remain unaware of what they've passed by. Finally, imagine holding that nickel, verified, authenticated, and recognized for its true value. Picture the possibilities: paying off debt, funding dreams, securing a legacy, all from a coin that once seemed inconsequential. It's a story of transformation, of vision, and of the thrill that comes when ordinary metal becomes extraordinary treasure. And the best part? The hunt continues. Every jar, drawer, and roll holds potential. Every coin could be the next 1986 D. Jefferson nickel worth nearly $700,000. All you need is the knowledge, the patience, and the courage to look closely enough to see what others miss. So, as you finish watching, remember, fortune favors the attentive, the curious, and the bold. That ordinary nickel in your pocket, it could be your ticket to a life you've only imagined. A coin that many dismissed as common change could secretly hold the kind of value that can transform lives. This is the story of the 1990 P. Thomas Jefferson nickel with the elusive D mint mark, a coin that has quietly become one of the rarest and most sought-after treasures in modern numismatics. If you think your spare change is worth nothing, think again. In the late summer of 1990, the U.S. Mint produced millions of Jefferson nickels for circulation. Most of these coins found their way into wallets, pockets, and piggy banks, destined to jingle unnoticed for decades. Yet among this ocean of nickels, a handful were born differently. They carried the D Mint mark, representing the Denver Mint, but with subtle errors in the striking process that made them extraordinarily rare. At first glance, the coin looks just like any other nickel, Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, Monticello on the reverse. But collectors are those who can spot the tiniest anomaly and know that rarity is not always obvious. It hides in plain sight, waiting for the sharp eye that can see value where others see only metal. What makes this 1990 P. Jefferson nickel so unique? It's a combination of minting quirks, historical context, and scarcity. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, the U.S. Mint faced pressures unlike any other time in its history. Demand for coins was high, production schedules were tight, and human error was inevitable. Some coins were double-struck, others had missing or misplaced mint marks, and a few carried subtle die errors that made them virtually indistinguishable from ordinary nickels unless you knew exactly what to look for. For the 1990 P. Jefferson nickel D mint mark, the error is delicate, precise, and exceedingly rare. Only a handful of these coins are known to exist in pristine condition. To put it in perspective, imagine a lottery ticket that you didn't even know you bought, suddenly transforming into a jackpot worth over $600,000. Now, here's the thing about rare coins: their value is not just in metal or history, it's in desirability, in the story they carry, and in the excitement they generate among collectors. Imagine attending an estate sale or rummaging through a dusty coin box and discovering a 1990 P. Jefferson nickel D mint mark. That moment of the heartbeat, the disbelief, the realization that can change everything. Because while many coins are plentiful and cheap, a true collector understands that scarcity drives value. And this coin, it is as scarce as they come. Its market value has soared to an astonishing $683,000. Yes, you heard that right, $683,000 for a coin no larger than your thumb. It's tempting to think, sure, that's impressive, but surely only professional collectors can spot such a coin. And here's where the story takes a turn. You don't need a PhD in numismatics to find rare coins. You need curiosity, attention to detail, and a willingness to look beyond the surface. Many of the wealthiest coin collectors in the U.S. started as ordinary people who simply paid attention to what others ignored. Some discovered treasure in their grandfather's old coin jar, others stumbled across errors while sifting through circulated coins at their local bank. The 1990 P. Jefferson nickel D mint mark is not a myth, it's a real, tangible opportunity, and it's out there waiting for the right person to claim it. Let's rewind for a moment and consider Thomas Jefferson himself, known as a founding father, the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, and the third President of the United States. Jefferson's image has graced the nickel since 1938. His likeness on this small coin has been seen billions of times, yet ironically, few realize that some of these coins could hold immense hidden value. History and rarity intertwine here in a way that makes collecting not just a hobby, but a journey into America's story itself. And when a coin like the 1990 P. Jefferson nickel D-Mint mark appears, it's as if history whispers, reminding us that sometimes the smallest objects can carry the biggest secrets. Now, let's talk about the thrill. There's a reason why high-value coin collecting feels almost like a treasure hunt. The anticipation of discovery, the suspense of authentication, and the rush of knowing that what you hold in your hand could be worth more than most people earn in a lifetime is addictive. Some collectors will travel across states, visiting shows, auctions, and private collections, all in pursuit of coins with rare mint marks. And for the 1990 P. Jefferson nickel D-Mint mark, each sighting of a verified specimen makes headlines. It's the kind of coin that can dominate auction floors, generate bidding wars, and spark a frenzy among collectors willing to pay top dollar for something few will ever own. Here's a question for you. What would you do if you discovered a coin worth $683,000 in your pocket change? Some might panic, others would dream about possibilities, paying off debts, buying a luxury car, or investing in their family's future. And while it's tempting to fantasize, the reality is that understanding the value of a coin and navigating its sale is a serious business. Professional grading and authentication are critical. Without the proper certification, even a coin of extraordinary rarity can fetch far less than its true market value. Companies like PCGS and NGC specialize in this process, ensuring that buyers can trust what they are purchasing. But here's the cliffhanger. The 1990 P. Jefferson nickel D-Mint mark is so rare that it often surfaces in unexpected ways. Sometimes it appears in a forgotten coin album, sometimes it's hidden in an old cash box, and occasionally, it emerges from a simple bankroll, passed from one person to another, entirely unaware of its extraordinary worth. Every specimen carries a story, and every sale has the potential to make headlines. People who discover this coin are often thrust into a whirlwind of excitement, media attention, and financial possibility that few experience in a lifetime. And yes, while $683,000 is the current market value, the truth is that rare coin values are dynamic. They fluctuate based on collector demand, auction results, and even broader economic conditions. This means the coin in your hands today could be worth even more tomorrow. The sense of urgency is real. In a market where every specimen is priceless, hesitation can be costly. The difference between selling at the right time and missing an opportunity could mean hundreds of thousands of dollars. Imagine thinking, "I'll hold on to it a little longer," only to realize you had the chance to transform your financial future. That tension of the fear of missing out is part of the allure of rare coin collecting. Now, let's pause for a second. You might be thinking, all of this sounds incredible, but how can I know if I've stumbled onto a 1990 P. Jefferson nickel D-Mint mark? The answer lies in education and careful examination. The D-Mint mark itself is your first clue, and from there, collectors examine subtle variations in the coin's strike, luster, and detail. Even experienced numismatists rely on magnification, reference guides, and professional advice to confirm authenticity. One tiny detail overlooked could mean the difference between a coin worth $1 and one worth nearly $700,000. It's a delicate, thrilling, and highly rewarding process. And here's the subtle twist that keeps collectors coming back. While most people assume only vintage coins from the 1800s or early 1900s can fetch millions, modern coins like the 1990 P. Jefferson nickel D mint mark challenge that notion. They remind us that rarity is not just a matter of age, but of circumstance. Production errors, limited minting, and historical context create hidden gems in even the most recent coinage. This coin, minted just over 30 years ago, is living proof that treasure can be found in places you'd never expect. The story comes full circle when you realize that this coin is more than metal or money. It's a symbol of possibility. It's a testament to curiosity, patience, and the courage to pay attention to what others overlook. Collectors who understand these and who act decisively can turn an ordinary object into a life-changing discovery. Whether it's a family heirloom tucked away for decades or a coin purchased at a local show, the 1990 P. Jefferson nickel D mint mark has the power to surprise, inspire, and transform. So, the next time you empty your pockets or sift through a coin jar, remember, among the dimes, quarters, and nickels, there may lie a piece of history worth more than you ever imagined. One small coin, minted in Denver in 1990, carrying Thomas Jefferson's proud visage, could be the key to unlocking wealth, excitement, and a story you'll tell for the rest of your life. The question is not if you will find it, but whether you will recognize its value when it whispers to you, hidden in plain sight. Because for those who do, the 1990 P. Jefferson nickel D mint mark is not just a coin, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And that opportunity, it could be sitting quietly in a drawer, waiting for someone like you to discover it. So pay attention, stay curious, and remember, history and fortune often arrive in the smallest of packages. Sometimes, the most extraordinary treasure is hiding right under your nose, jingling gently in your pocket. Today, we're not talking about any ordinary coin. We're talking about the 2006 P. Thomas Jefferson nickel, with a D mint mark, a coin so rare that collectors and investors alike have placed its current market value at an astonishing $677,000. Yes, you heard that right, more than $500,000 for a single 5-cent piece. But why? How can a coin minted barely 2 decades ago hold such an immense value? That's exactly what we're about to uncover, and trust me, you won't want to blink. It all begins with the story of Thomas Jefferson, the 3rd President of the United States, whose image graces the obverse of this very nickel. His face, familiar to millions, might seem ordinary to the casual observer, but for numismatists and the coin experts, every detail tells a story. Every mint mark, every ridge, every subtle imperfection carries the potential to transform a common coin into a treasure. And that's where the magic of the 2006 P. Thomas Jefferson nickel comes into play. At first glance, you might think, 2006? That's not even that old. Most nickels from this era sell for mere cents above face value. But here's where the twist enters. This nickel isn't just any run-of-the-mill coin. It's a mint terror, a rare anomaly, a misstep that the U.S. Mint itself never intended to release. Imagine the meticulous machinery of the mint, every coin inspected, polished, and stamped with precision. And yet, in the chaos of production, one coin or perhaps a handful slipped through, carrying a mistake that would catapult it into the realm of the extraordinary. Collectors and investors are often drawn to error coins because they embody a paradox. They are simultaneously flawed and perfect. The 2006 P. Thomas Jefferson nickel with a D mint mark is a perfect example. Its scarcity is not measured by age alone but by its rarity and provenance. To put it in perspective, consider this: while millions of nickels were minted in 2006, only a tiny fraction display the characteristics that make this coin priceless. And for those lucky enough to hold one, the opportunity is nothing short of life-changing. But let's pause for a moment and consider the sheer psychological thrill of owning something so rare. Imagine walking into your home, reaching into a coin jar, and discovering a coin that, in seconds, could be worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. The excitement, the sudden rush of adrenaline, your pulse quickens, fear and excitement blend, fear of losing it, excitement of the potential windfall. It's a heady mix that has driven collectors to obsess over nickels, dimes, and pennies for decades. Now, how does one even determine the value of such a coin? Why $677,000? Specifically, it's a meticulous process, involving expert grading, historical verification, and comparison against past auction results. Every scratch, every luster, every detail matters. The Professional Coin Grading Service, or PCGS, assigns scores with almost obsessive precision, and when a coin like the 2006 P. Thomas Jefferson nickel with a D mint mark reaches the top tier of grading, its value skyrockets. But here's a little secret: value in the world of rare coins is not just a number, it's perception, desire, and exclusivity all wrapped into one shiny metal disc. Collectors, especially high-net-worth investors, are willing to pay staggering sums for something that very few can claim to own. The scarcity principle plays a critical role. There is, quite literally, one of these coins for every hundreds of millions of ordinary nickels. That rarity drives the price beyond imagination. And if you think you've seen rare coins, think again. If this is not just a collector's item, it's a conversation starter, a wealth statement, and a tangible piece of history all rolled into one. You might be wondering, how does a modern coin even gain such status? The answer lies in the interplay of history, human error, and market dynamics. Coins are, after all, snapshots of the times in which they were created. The 2006 nickel reflects not only the image of Thomas Jefferson but also the minting processes of the early 21st century, a period where quality control was nearly flawless. That makes any imperfection all the more extraordinary, because it is so unexpected. Think of it as finding a diamond in a pile of gravel, polished perfectly by accident. But rarity alone isn't enough. Proveniencia, the story of a coin's origin, its journey through hands of collectors, and its appearance in auctions plays a pivotal role. Imagine a coin once overlooked, sitting quietly in a drawer or coin album, until a savvy collector noticed a tiny deviation from the standard. That coin enters the marketplace, and suddenly, its value explodes. The thrill of discovery, the tension of validation, these are the emotional triggers that make rare coins more than metal. They become treasure hunts, games of intellect and intuition. And here's a thought that might make your jaw drop. Some collectors believe there are still 2006 P. Thomas Jefferson nickels out there, unrecognized, tucked away in piggy banks or forgotten collections. Could one of them be yours? Could the next life-altering $677,000 coin be sitting quietly under your couch cushion? It's a tantalizing cliffhanger, one that has sent collectors scouring their homes, attics, and garages in hopes of finding a miracle in metal. Transitioning from potential discovery to actionable strategy, let's consider what it takes to ensure that such a coin reaches its full value. Condition is everything. Even a minuscule scratch or tarnish can dramatically alter a coin's worth. Collectors obsess over grading scales and storage conditions, using airtight holders, humidity control, and careful handling to preserve perfection. And while the casual observer might see just a nickel, seasoned investors see a tangible asset, a coin that could rival real estate or stocks in potential return on investment. But beyond financial gain, there's a deeper lure. Owning such a coin is akin to owning a piece of American history, a symbol of ingenuity, precision, and the unlikeliest of fortunes. Each glance at it serves as a reminder that extraordinary value can lie hidden in the most ordinary places. That's the excitement, the thrill, and the lesson. The universe sometimes rewards those who notice what others overlook. Let's talk numbers one last time. $677,000 is not just a static figure. It represents a market hungry for rarity, a community that recognizes value where others see commonality, and a timeless narrative that transforms small, humble coins into objects of immense worth. And if you're sitting there thinking, maybe I have a 2006 P. Thomas Jefferson nickel, the time to act is now. Markets fluctuate, collector interest peaks and wanes, and every moment a coin sits unnoticed is a potential fortune slipping away. In the end, this is more than a story about a coin. It's a story about discovery, opportunity, and the extraordinary potential hidden in the ordinary. It's a reminder that fortune favors the observant, the patient, and the brave, and it's a call to action. Search your collections, examine your drawers, and consider that sometimes, history isn't just something you read about, it's something you can hold. Because when that rare nickel, the 2006 P. Thomas Jefferson with a diamond mark, crosses your path, it's not just metal, it's a doorway to possibility, an invitation to wealth, and a testament to the enduring power of rarity. And if you think about it deeply, perhaps the most valuable coin in the world isn't the one sitting in a museum or an auction house, it's the one waiting to be discovered in your very own hands. If I told you that a single 5-cent coin, something most Americans have ignored for decades, could quietly be worth more than a luxury home, would you believe me, or would you laugh and reach for your coffee? That reaction is exactly why this story matters, because somewhere in the United States right now, sitting in a drawer, a coffee can, or a forgotten coin jar, there may be a 1964 Thomas Jefferson nickel with no mint mark that has already rewritten what we think money is worth. And if you're still listening, that tells me something important. Part of you suspects that history has been hiding in plain sight. In 1964, America was restless. The nation was still reeling from the shock of President Kennedy's assassination. The Cold War loomed large, civil rights marches filled the streets, and yet everyday life moved on. Gas was cheap, television dinners were modern, and the U.S. Mint was working around the clock, striking millions of coins to keep up with demand. Nickels poured out in staggering numbers. 5 cents felt insignificant, almost disposable, but history has a habit of disguising treasure as ordinary. The Jefferson nickel had already been around for over 20 years by then. Thomas Jefferson's calm profile faced left, Monticello stood proudly on the reverse, and for most people, that was the end of the story. A workhorse coin, something you dropped into a vending machine without a second thought. No mint mark simply meant it was struck in Philadelphia, the most common origin of all, or so everyone believed. Here's where the story quietly shifts, because during that chaotic year, amid record production and pressure to flood the economy with coinage, mistakes happened. Not the kind you notice right away, the kind that slip through quality control and vanish into circulation, unnoticed for decades. A tiny variation here, an unexpected metal composition there, a dye anomaly so subtle it wouldn't reveal itself until years later, under magnification, in the hands of someone who knew exactly what to look for. Imagine a man cleaning out his late father's garage, dust in the air, old boxes stacked like forgotten memories. He finds a small drawer of nickels, nothing special, he thinks, just dad's change. But one coin catches the light differently. It feels a broken bar wrong, or maybe right, in a way he can't explain. That momento when curiosity overrides habit is where fortunes are born. Experts now know that a small number of 1964 no-mint marked Jefferson nickels exhibit characteristics so rare, so anomalous, that they challenge everything collectors once assumed, struck under unusual conditions, possibly from experimental dyes, possibly from plan case never intended for public release. The exact origin remains debated, and that uncertainty only adds fuel to the fire, because in the world of elite collectors, mystery is value. One of these coins surfaced and sent shockwaves through the numismatic community, graded at an elite level, authenticated by top experts, and backed by provenance that raised more questions than answers. It crossed the auction block at a price that made headlines quietly, the way serious money often moves, just under $1 million, around $954,000 for a nickel most people wouldn't bend over to pick up off the sidewalk. Let that sink in. 5 cents became nearly $1 million, not because it was shiny, but because it was different. Now here's the part that should make you sit up a little straighter. That coin was not discovered in a museum collection. It wasn't locked away in a vault for 50 years. It was found in private hands, which means others can exist, and statistically, they almost certainly do. Most people assume that all valuable coins were discovered long ago, that the gold rush is over, that only professionals stand a chance. That belief is comforting, because it excuses inaction. But history doesn't reward comfort, it rewards attention. Ask yourself an uncomfortable question. How many nickels have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands, tens of thousands. How many did you actually look at? And before you dismiss this as fantasy, consider this. The U.S. Mint does not publicly document every error, every anomaly, every experimental strike. Some truths emerge only when collectors notice patterns decades later, and when they do, prices don't rise slowly, they explode. There's a moment in every great discovery story where doubt creeps in. Maybe this is hype, maybe it's exaggerated, maybe lightning won't strike twice. That's normal. Fear keeps most people safe, but it also keeps them poor. The collectors who chase these coins aren't guessing, they're analyzing metal content, die markers, strike pressure, and microscopic features invisible to the untrained eye. They know that a single detail can separate a common nickel from a life-changing asset. And here's a slightly humorous truth. The most valuable nickel in America could be sitting in the same place you keep spare screws and rubber bands. How's that for irony? As demand for tangible assets grows, especially among Americans who no longer trust paper wealth the way they once did, rare coins have become something more than collectibles. They're insurance, they're legacy, they're portable history, wealth you can hold in your hand. And unlike stocks or digital numbers on a screen, they don't disappear with a market crash or a forgotten password. Collectors in their 40s, 50s, and 60s are paying attention now more than ever. They remember a time when money felt real, when 5 cents bought something, when Jefferson was more than a face on a coin, and they're competing fiercely for pieces that represent not just rarity, but certainty. That competition is exactly why values like $954,000 are no longer shocking to insiders. It's why auction rooms go quiet when one of these nickels appears. It's why phones come out, not to take pictures, but to move funds. And this is where urgency enters the story, because every year that passes, fewer undiscovered examples remain. Coins get lost, melted, damaged, forgotten. The window doesn't close with a bang, it closes silently, one missed opportunity at a time. If you're thinking, what would I even look for? You're already ahead of most people, because awareness is the first step. Weight, strike quality, unusual surfaces, details that don't match known examples, and yes, sometimes it's just a feeling that something isn't quite ordinary. The final act of this story hasn't been written yet, the record hasn't been broken publicly, the next discovery hasn't made headlines, and that's the most exciting part, because the next person to change their financial future with a humble nickel hasn't stepped forward yet. It could be a retiree sorting through old change, a family member inheriting a box they almost throw away, or someone watching this right now, realizing that the past might be holding the key to a very different future. So the next time you hear the soft clink of coins, don't ignore it. History doesn't shout, it whispers, and sometimes, it whispers through 5 cents of forgotten metal, waiting for the one person willing to listen. Before you scroll away, take a breath and imagine this. Somewhere in America, right now, a small 5-cent coin sits forgotten in a jar, a drawer, maybe even in your own pocket. It looks ordinary, it feels ordinary, and yet, under the right circumstances, that humble coin could be worth more than a luxury home, more than a lifetime of paychecks, more than most people ever expect to see in one place. We're talking about a 1965 Thomas Jefferson nickel with no mint mark. A coin so overlooked that most people never give it a second glance, and yet so powerful that one verified example has reached a staggering valuation near $948,000. Yes, for a nickel, 5 cents, or was it? The year was 1965, a moment of tension and transformation in the United States. The nation was deep in cultural change. Money itself was changing, and the U.S. Mint was under pressure like never before. Coin shortages were everywhere. People were hoarding silver. The government made a controversial decision that would reshape American pocket change forever. And in the middle of the chaos, something quietly slipped through the cracks. No alarms, no headlines, just metal, machines, and human error. The kind of error that collectors dream about decades later. Picture a freshly minted Jefferson nickel dropping from a press in 1965. No mint mark, just Thomas Jefferson's calm, familiar profile staring back at the future. Millions of nickels were struck that year, and almost all of them are worth exactly what you'd expect, 5 cents. But a microscopic fraction were different. Not different enough to scream for attention, different enough to whisper, and those whispers, over time, turned into one of the most intriguing modern coin mysteries in American history. Now here's where most people stop listening, because they think they already know the ending. I've seen 1965 nickels before, they say. I've spent them. That's exactly the point. The most valuable things are often hidden in plain sight. The 1965 Jefferson nickel is a master of disguise. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't announce itself. It waits patiently for the one person who knows what to look for, and who understands why this specific coin, under very specific conditions, can change a life. During 1965, the U.S. Mint removed mint marks entirely from circulating coins. Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco. It didn't matter. No letter, no clue. This decision was meant to discourage hoarding, but it had an unintended consequence. It created a perfect environment for anomalies to pass unnoticed. Transitional errors, die mistakes, striking irregularities. Coins that were never meant to exist, but did anyway, and when they did, they entered circulation alongside millions of ordinary nickels, blending in like wolves dressed as sheep, or maybe sheep dressed as wolves. Hard to tell until you look closely. Collectors today know that value doesn't come from age alone, it comes from rarity, condition, and story. And the story of the 1965 no mint mark Jefferson nickel is loaded with all three. Some of the most valuable examples are tied to extraordinary mint errors, coins struck on the wrong plankett, coins with dramatic die doubling, coins with surfaces so pristine they seem frozen in time. These are not your average nickels pulled from a couch cushion. These are coins that survive decades without wear, damage, or cleaning. Coins that somehow escaped the fate of vending machines, asphalt, and pocket change oblivion. Here's a question that resets your brain for a second. How many nickels have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands, tens of thousands. Now ask yourself how many you actually examined. Probably zero. That's not a flaw, that's human nature, and it's exactly why these coins still surface. Every once in a while, someone looks twice, and when they do, everything changes. One verified specimen, connected to a rare and dramatic minting anomaly and preserved in near-perfect condition, shocked the numismatic world when its valuation approached $948,000, not because it was flashy, but because it was authentic, documented, graded, undeniable, a coin that proved, once again, that American pocket change still holds secrets. And if you're feeling a little uncomfortable right now, that's good. That's the fear creeping in, the fear that you might have already spent something extraordinary, or worse, that you might still have it and not know. But fear isn't the whole story. There's excitement here too, real excitement, because this isn't about one lucky person in history. It's about possibility. The possibility that you, right now, own something similar. The possibility that a drawer of coins isn't clutter, but capital. And the possibility that knowledge, not luck, is what separates the wealthy from the unaware. Thomas Jefferson's image on the nickel was meant to symbolize ideals, independence, and legacy. There's an irony in that, because the most valuable Jefferson nickels today reward the same traits: independence from assumptions, respect for history, and the willingness to look closer when others don't. The 1965 no mint mark nickel sits at the intersection of policy change, manufacturing stress, and human oversight. That combination doesn't happen often, and when it does, it leaves behind artifacts that the market eventually recognizes as extraordinary. Let's be honest for a moment. The idea that a nickel could be worth nearly $1 million sounds ridiculous, almost funny. It's the kind of thing you'd laugh about at a dinner table. Yeah, and my penny is worth a Ferrari. But history has a habit of humbling skepticism. Every major discovery in numismatics started as a joke to someone who didn't know what they were holding. The difference between humor and heartbreak is usually just timing. As awareness grows, the window narrows, more people are checking, more coins are being examined, graded, and removed from circulation forever. That means fewer chances for new discoveries. The urgency is real. Even if it's quiet, this isn't a lottery ticket, it's a dwindling opportunity. And the longer you wait, the more likely it is that someone else looks first. Imagine the moment of realization, a magnifying glass, a subtle detail, a weight that feels just slightly off, a surface that tells a different story under the light. That pause where your brain says, "This can't be real," followed by the faster heartbeat when you realize it just might be. That's not fantasy. That's happened before. It's happening now. And it will happen again, until the last of these anomalies is found. Here's the cliffhanger most people don't see coming. Even if you don't own the exact nickel that reached a $948,000 valuation, there are tiers of value beneath it. Thousands, tens of thousands, six figures. Coins that don't make headlines, but still change lives. Coins that pay off houses, fund retirements, or rewrite what you thought was possible from something so small. The real tragedy isn't missing out on $1 million nickel, it's never knowing you had a chance. Never learning what to look for, never taking the time to separate ordinary from extraordinary, because wealth, especially hidden wealth, rarely announces itself. It waits for recognition, so the next time you hear the soft clink of coins, don't dismiss it, don't laugh it off. Ask yourself a different question. What if this isn't spare change? What if it's unfinished business from 1965, still circulating, still anonymous, still waiting for the right pair of eyes? Thomas Jefferson once said that knowledge is power. In the world of rare coins, that power can be worth far more than 5 cents. And the story of the 1965 no-mint Mark Jefferson nickel isn't over yet. In fact, for someone watching this right now, it may just be beginning.